Welcome to AP Environmental Science. In this video, we are going to briefly discuss age structure diagrams, which are also called population pyramids, and this is discussed in Module 22 of your textbook. There are several factors that affect human population growth, and if you look at this graph, it shows throughout the history of most time of humans living here on Earth, human population has really been limited by some pretty significant factors. So humans had to overcome a lot of obstacles to find enough food, to find shelter, to have that safe environment, to have more offspring. And over the course of the history of human time, the population has grown very slowly. However, in recent years, so ever since the modern age, human population has grown exponentially. And that is primarily because humans are no longer limited by quite as many limiting factors, so we have been able to grow pretty much unchecked in recent years. Now, personally, I don't think that that's going to be able to continue for much longer. I think we're going to start experiencing some pretty significant dieback, and that's going to cause a lot of issues and a lot of conflict within the human population. Now, circling back here, in general, when we look at the factors affecting human growth, it's the number of births minus the number of deaths. That tells you how fast you're growing. Now, if you're looking at a country and not the world as a whole, you also have to take into account the amount of immigrants and the amount of emigrants. So the way to remember the difference between immigration and emigration: immigration, they are coming in, so I for in. Emigration, they are exiting, so E for exit. There are some other factors that also affect human population growth, and these are things like the total fertility rate, so the number of births per woman, the overall life expectancy, and your infant mortality, so how many babies actually make it past those early formative years. And a lot of that has to do with the overall level of medical care at that location. And the number of babies that a woman has is pretty directly tied to the level of education that that woman has and whether or not there is access to family planning, so that way the woman can decide when she wants to start having babies. If we look at the overall human population size, as of the making of this video, the global population was around 7.8 billion people. Now, that's not a hard and fast number, but when you're looking at billions of people, we're going to be at that 7.8 for a little while. Probably in a couple years, we'll jump up to that 7.9 billion people. Within the United States, though, we're not looking at billions, we're in millions, and there's around 330 million people in the United States. I put some other countries up here for comparison to help you get an idea of just how big some countries are in terms of their population. But when we look at those sizes of population, that doesn't necessarily give us the full picture. If we convert those into what's called an age structure diagram, we can get a better measure of the quality of life and just the overall access to medical care, education of women, and all sorts of other factors if we group that into a better diagram. So a population pyramid or an age structure diagram groups individuals based off of their gender assigned at birth, so whether they're male or female, or uterus havers versus not uterus havers, and how old the individuals are. And they group them into 5-year categories. Because honestly, if you grouped it by every single individual year, that might get a little messy and a little bit hard to work with that data. So 5-year age brackets actually works pretty well for this. So I have a population pyramid over here on the right-hand side of the screen. And you can see in this particular country, actually this is the world population, it's kind of stable, but we have fewer individuals at the top and more individuals at the bottom. So that means we're going to be having this slow, continuous growth. Now we can look at some other population pyramids, and each pyramid shows some different trends. So the pyramid all the way on the right-hand side of the screen is the negative population growth, which is in Germany. So what happens with negative population growth is you have more people that are beyond their reproductive years than are younger than the reproductive years or in those years. So that means there's not as many people that are in that reproductive age bracket that are going to be having the babies to replenish the number of people that are in the older age brackets. Now in the middle of the screen is slow growth. That's the United States. We have a pretty straight column, but when you get to the older years, that's when things taper inwards. And that makes sense. I think it's interesting though with the United States graph that when we look at our elderly population, there's actually more elderly women than men. I think that has a little bit to do with the way that things were structured within our society in the past. So if we think of the previous wars that the United States fought in, primarily it was the men that went and fought in the war, the women were left behind. So when we saw that population decline in the overall United States due to war years, that decline only happened on the male side and it did not happen on the female side. If we look at the graph all the way on the left-hand side of the screen, this is a rapid population growth. This is the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So what's happening here is people are having a whole lot of babies. And yes, there are factors like high infant mortality, so not a lot of those babies reach old age. However, as medical advances start to take place in countries that have this rapid growth, more of those babies are going to reach older age and reach reproductive years. However, that's going to happen before there is this cultural shift towards having smaller family sizes. So countries that have this pyramid shape are going to experience this very rapid growth for many years before things start to slow down. Now I wanted to look at just the United States, and this is a little bit more detailed image of our population pyramid. And I think it's interesting, we're able to see that baby boomer bump within our population pyramid. And those baby boomers, when they had kids, that created the millennial generation. So we see a second bump in the population pyramid. Now, the millennial generation at the time of making this video is just starting to have children of their own. So we might see another bump in the population in that next generation. However, if those millennials do not choose to have the 2.1 children, that is the typical average, then we might see our population start to shrink. If we zoom into individual counties within the United States, we can start to see some interesting trends. So this pyramid here shows Ouray County in Colorado. This is a county that is relatively rural, it's nestled up into the mountains, and we see a very large population of baby boomers. And then we see it really decline into that Generation X, but there's another bump with the Gen Z, so the younger people. Now, we can use this information to think about what is happening in that particular location. So based off of this pyramid, we can guess that this is probably a retirement community, but that doesn't necessarily explain that bump in the younger generations. So when you look up this county on a map, you'll find it nestled between a lot of national forests, and a few of those forests have their ranger stations in Ouray County. So that means that a lot of those people that work on those forests are having kids, and that accounts for that little bump in the younger generation. Now, if we look at Centre County in Pennsylvania, this pyramid might make you scratch your head a little bit and say, what in the world is going on? We see this huge bump in the population of people that are between 20 and 24 years old. Now, if this was a county that had a lot of industry and there were a bunch of people that were moving in there from out of state to try to work in factories, you would see a big bump in that 20 to 40 range. But we don't see that here. It's really just this young age group. And if you do a little research into the county, you find that Pennsylvania State University is located in Centre County, Pennsylvania. So when we're looking at this population pyramid, we have this huge group of college students that accounts for this big bump in the population. Now, in summary, age structure diagrams do tell us a bit of information about the growth rate of the population and a little bit of the quality of life of the people that are living there. I included this image here on the summary slide just to help you start thinking about the human population as a whole throughout the entire world, where it's been in the past, and where it's headed in the future. So right now we're starting to see global population start to stabilize a little bit, but it's going to take a little bit of work on every single person's part in order to help reach sustainable levels for the world population. Now, if you have any questions, please send them my way and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And I hope that as you watch this video, you were able to learn something.